So I'm getting ready to plant some katuk. Now this is more of a subtropical, tropical plant, USDA hardiness zone 10 and up. Here in 9B, there may be a little bit of a challenge getting this to overwinter and perennialize, but what I found very similar to this plant and the chaya, which is another plant in that same tropical, subtropical category, which I've had success perennializing and having come back year after year here, is that the cuttings in the wood are very similar. Also, their growing requirements are very similar. And for that reason, I'm thinking I'm going to have a good success if I put this maybe in a little microclimate area. We're here next to the pond. We got a mass of water here, which should raise the ambient air temperature a little bit in the winter with the fountain cycling. There's a couple different pumps that are creating just a little bit of heat. But it may warm up this area. That, along with the density of plants growing around, and also the examples of some plants like my Ashitaba, which have taken off in this area, make this a good candidate for a location for the katuk, which typically will grow as an understory in a forest situation. It likes quite a bit of shade, can handle sun as well, but in sun you're definitely going to need to be doing more watering. But in shade, it's pretty tolerant of most conditions. So we've got a sun sail here, which is providing some shade for the pond, and it also provides a little bit of shade for the surrounding area here, which is nice because it allows me another zone for planting in. Yeah, these Ashitaba plants are really thriving in this area. And although they have perennialized in other areas in the yard, these are by far more healthy and vibrant. And I attribute that to this little microclimate here next to the pond with the shade, the surrounding plants. So right here I planted some chaya the other day. 2 of the cuttings, they look well alive. This third one literally been broken out of the ground. So something like trampled over this, probably one of the dogs. That's too bad. Just going to give this a fresh cut here. Still a fresh cutting, and there's several nodes, so we should have success with that. I could even try with this little piece here. Let's give it some fresh cuts. And that's why I like to protect younger plants like this with these little plant protection cages I make. I'm going to go grab one. So these little plant protection cages I make just using this concrete wire, reinforcement wire. They usually come in like 100-foot rolls, and you can use them to make tomato cages, plant protection cages. Then I'll just wrap something around the outside, in this case chicken wire. That keeps the chickens out, the dogs from tromping over this area, even keep the birds out in most cases. But another cool thing about this is for young plants and seedlings, you could drape a little bit of burlap or what have you over the top and create a little shade as well while those plants get going. So a lot of uses for having these around. I probably got, I don't know, at least a dozen of these that I move around as I need them. Probably could use even a few more. So I'm going to plant this katuk, and again, I'm going to protect these plants like I did this once I get them in the ground. But before I can get these planted, I need to take some of the jungle growth out of here, utilize it as some chop and drop. And one of the plants I'm going to be taking out is this big branch here from this perennial green. Now, I allowed this plant to continually mature because it's quite the incredible hybrid of greens that I have going here. These leaves get huge, they're delicious, it's very resistant to mildew, to pests. So I'm going to be taking this arm of the tree off, allowing it to focus more of its energy over here where I want the plant to grow. I'm going to actually take some cuttings from some of those branches there, and I'll probably do a bit of chop and drop with that as well. That's going to open up this area back here where I can plant the katuk. You can see how it opened up the light for this gomi berry I have growing over here as well. So we got some vine weeds growing up over here, a little bit of Bermuda grass. So we'll make a little pile of this stuff and get most of it out just manually. The ground is moist, makes this job a lot easier having the proper tool. Makes this job a lot easier. I'm not concerned about being perfect with it. Just want to get the upper hand here. As long as I'm getting down here on my knees anyway, I might as well do some cleanup, right? We'll just clear a space from the mulch. Work this soil a bit. I see mycelium, hyphae strands, worms. A lot of breakdown here. Now there's patches of dry dirt, soil, broken down wood chips in here. And I found that in those earlier stages, it can be good to kind of work this stuff together a little bit after it's broken down for a couple years, and you're not worried about tying up nitrogen like you would if you were to do this with fresh wood chips. Some of those older wood chips, if they work their way into the soil, is fine. And then to get all that breakdown into the native, if you were originally dealing with poor soil, and just all the breakdown from the mycelium here, I find that can be beneficial. Yeah, so this area has worked pretty good here. Little piece of plastic. All right, so we got our cutting. We'll just now these plants can get almost 10 feet tall, several feet wide, but I don't mind if I crowd this area a bit and just prune the plant to fit in. That's the goal here. I'm also not too concerned about spacing it out right. I just want to get a patch of this established. That's how I do it a lot of the time. I just get little patches of things established, and then I can go from there later. So I'll put 3 over here. Then we'll go find another place in the yard just to compare results. This is a larger cage, and without any covering. This is mainly for keeping the dogs out. I don't think the chickens are going to bother with this area much. Now if I had put in straw or something around this patch, then yeah, you'd want the chicken wire there. They'd reach in, start to scratch it up. So I'm going to remove this branch here too, which is in the way, and it's actually already broken here at the base. Interesting thing about these plants is if they're even hanging by a thread, they will continue to grow as if they were unharmed. And with all these perennial greens, if you allow these plants to start sprawling out, touching the ground, they'll actually root from those contact points if it's got good soil underneath, maybe a little bit covered over the top as well. But hey, look, the cage is already working. Somebody can't walk through my newly planted patch. So now that I got those branches removed, I can take some of this lower growth off. Just hope to create better airflow around the plants is always a good idea, not having it too dense. Especially if you're having any sort of a pest issue. Airflow is going to be crucial on getting the upper hand. Now when it comes to chop and drop, I'm aware of where I put things to try to keep the garden looking tidy and organized, but still utilizing those natural growing techniques that help to build soil, reduce your inputs, reduce having to import materials to sustain your design, but at the same time, have a nice garden that's functional to walk through, looks nice, Is this functional to walk through, May? I'm going to take some of the lower leaves off this Ashitaba. I want to show you guys this yellow sap starts to come out of the plant. You can see the little beads starting to form. We'll come back and look at this in a minute. But we're just working this little corner of the garden here. I've got some more weeding I can do. And a bit more pruning. These are beautiful leaves for making tea. I'm going to save the nice ones. Ashitaba is also known as tomorrow's leaf because when you harvest from the plant, it really takes off right here in the middle. It starts some new growth. So you just want to harvest around the outside and let that center take off once again. So not a lot has developed since we first took the cutting of the Ashitaba, but that yellow sap is known as chalcone. It has some reportedly extremely healing properties to it, so you may want to look into that. Alright, so I got 2 more of these Katuk cuttings. I'm thinking this patch here, we've got more Ashitaba, some aloe. It gets a bit of daytime shade from the loquat, which is only getting bigger. This could be a good spot. In fact, I think right in front of the loquat would be a good spot. I'm going to do that. Clear this area here. This top layer here is what you can expect if you lay wood chips down and don't disturb it for a couple years. This is what happens. And again, like I was saying, I find it can be beneficial after you let it break down for a couple years if you kind of work it into your native soil. You don't have to do this, but it's a great opportunity to condition the native soil and get a deeper profile that you can plant into and have the whole thing be consistent with nutrients and proper drainage, airflow. Makes it more habitable to the worms to come in. You could even add in a little fertilizer at this point if you wanted to, but there's plenty of goodness in the wood chip breakdown. There we go. 2 more cuttings, put one there and one there. Starting to drizzle again. So I recently reset the pond so it's nice and full. The rain's coming in as well, topped it off. Alright guys, my camera's getting wet now. And we got all the Katuk planted, so I'm going to call it for today. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well, having a good day. And if you were able to find a moment to get out in the garden and get one thing done today, spring is right around the corner. Every single thing you can do to make progress towards growing an amazing garden this year is time well spent and investment well made. Thanks everyone. Take care. I'll be talking to you again soon.